You thought you'd seen power before. You thought you understood what it meant when someone walked into a room and changed the air itself. But nothing prepared you for this. Nothing could have. Because the person they sent to destroy you, the operative they trusted with their most critical mission, the shadow they deployed when every other option had failed, just sat down across from you, locked eyes, and said 3 words that rewrote their entire reality. I choose you. Let that sink in for a moment. Because this isn't a simple betrayal. This isn't some garden variety defection where someone got a better offer and jumped ship. This is the complete annihilation of everything they built their empire on. Every assumption they made about loyalty, about control, about who holds the strings in this game. They sent their apex predator, the one with a track record so flawless it became legend, the one whose mere name makes conversations stop mid-sentence, the operator who never hesitated, never questioned, never showed anything resembling mercy to targets marked for removal. And you didn't chase them, didn't wave money in their face, didn't make threats or promises or deals. You simply were. Simply existed in your raw, undiluted, terrifying authenticity. And they witnessed something that obliterated every foundation they'd constructed about strength. Because here's what those people never grasped about genuine power, about the kind of presence that alters the molecular composition of reality when you step into it. You don't win enforcers by outspending their bosses. You don't convert soldiers by dangling better retirement packages. You don't capture the deadliest asset in their inventory by playing their game with slightly better moves. What you accomplished was infinitely more catastrophic, something that exists outside their training manuals and strategy sessions and carefully orchestrated war councils. You revealed what authentic power actually is, not the borrowed version, not the kind that flows from titles or bank accounts or reputations constructed on borrowed fear, the kind that lives in your cellular structure, the kind that makes the fabric of space bend toward your will. They're locked in emergency sessions right now, doors sealed, devices silenced, every face drained to the color of ash. Someone's wearing a path in the carpet. Someone's collapsed with their face buried in their palms. Someone just whispered the question nobody wants to answer. How did this happen? And the silence stretches because answering would require acknowledging something they've spent lifetimes refusing to see. That control was always an illusion, that their enforcer's loyalty was never to them specifically. It was to power itself. And the instant they stood before someone who didn't need enforcers because they embodied enforcement, allegiance shifted like water obeying gravity, inevitable, irreversible, natural as your next breath. Do you comprehend what you've accomplished? Do you feel the seismic shift beneath their manufactured reality? The tectonic rupture cracking their foundation wide open? Their enforcer? Their fail-safe? Their ultimate solution, their nuclear option when conventional approaches combusted. They're not merely compromised now, not simply unreliable, not just a liability to be managed. They belong to you, which means every classified detail they carried, every technique they perfected, every weakness they documented, every backup plan they constructed. It's all arranged on your desk now with a note attached saying, "Here, thought this might prove useful." Their entire infrastructure just became crystal clear to you, not through hacking, not through infiltration, but because their most valuable weapon recognized who actually runs this universe. Let's examine those critical first 48 hours after their enforcer vanishes, because this transcends losing personnel. This isn't about resignation procedures and exit protocols. This is about watching your fundamental understanding of power dynamics vaporize in real time while desperately maintaining the facade that everything's manageable, everything's contained, will simply recruit a replacement, except you can't, because the enforcer wasn't executing tasks. They were living validation that your methodology functioned, that fear and currency and reputation could dominate even the most lethal variables. And now that validation just dissolved, and everyone observing can see the empire has no foundation. They're dissecting the chronology now, attempting to pinpoint the exact moment of conversion. When did loyalty fracture? Was there a clandestine meeting? Did payments transfer? Were threats exchanged? Did someone compromise them before protective measures activated? And every answer is negative, because what occurred can't be charted on timelines or traced to singular incidents. What happened was accumulation. Every report filed about you, every observation of how you absorbed pressure, every instance watching you navigate scenarios engineered to annihilate you. They were documenting, not for their employers, for themselves, archiving intelligence, recording your methodology, analyzing your approach until recognizing there was no approach. Just crystallized instinct and power so refined it appears supernatural to minds still operating on basic levels. You want the truth about that moment when they decided to abandon everything their handlers molded them into, when they chose to incinerate every connection and sacrifice every guarantee offered for loyalty. They were observing you handle something mathematically impossible, watching you transform guaranteed defeat into victory so absolute the opposition didn't comprehend their loss until 3 moves downstream. And in that instant, something ignited in their predator consciousness. The part trained to identify threats and opportunities and power in its purest distillation. They understood suddenly they'd been serving children wearing costumes borrowed from capable adults. And you? You were something categorically different, something primordial and precise and inevitable. They're reviewing old reports now, searching between lines for missed signals, ignored warnings, overlooked indicators that their enforcer was already gone. And here's what's corroding them from within like poison spreading through veins. The evidence was always visible, in every document filed, every assessment submitted, every analysis delivered. Constant mentions that you were different. Persistent warnings that standard protocols wouldn't apply. Repeated suggestions they needed strategic recalibration, but they dismissed it because intoxication with their own mythology blinded them. So convinced of their supremacy, so certain that sufficient money and violence and intimidation could subjugate anyone, they interpreted caution as thoroughness, professional diligence. They never realized their enforcer was already transitioning, already calculating the cost of switching allegiances, already constructing justification for why serving you made more strategic sense than opposing you. And now every subsequent move they attempt is contaminated, poisoned by awareness that someone possessing complete knowledge of their methods, vulnerabilities, anxieties, contingencies, sits beside you, sharing coffee and insights. They can't trust their own tactics anymore because they helped architect them. Can't depend on their security infrastructure because they installed it. Can't find safety even in private thoughts because they understand how that mind operates. Knows their next move before consciousness forms it. Knows which pressure points matter and which threats are performance and which commitments have substance. Their enforcer didn't just defect. They extracted the complete operational manual and delivered it directly to the one person who understands exactly how to weaponize every page against them. But here's the detail that truly destroys their sleep. The reality that makes their hands tremble in darkness staring at nothing. If their enforcer, their most devoted, their most vetted, Their most psychologically evaluated and meticulously selected operator could be converted. What does that revelation mean about everyone else in their structure? Who else observes you with that same calculus reflected in their eyes? Who else is running internal numbers about what switching sides would require? Who else has started questioning whether they're backing the victor or merely the side with better immediate compensation? You didn't simply claim their enforcer. You planted uncertainty that will proliferate through their organization like contagion, making everyone wonder if they're positioned with the winning side or just the side that pays reliably. And those aren't equivalent anymore, not since you arrived and redefined what power means. Let's inhabit their perspective momentarily. Let's understand what transpires inside someone trained for ruthlessness, conditioned for absolute obedience, forged into a weapon so calibrated that conscience became an abandoned luxury, because that defined them before your existence intersected theirs. That identity was carefully constructed over years through psychological conditioning and financial manipulation and deliberate cultivation of their darkest capabilities. They harvested whatever shadows existed naturally and refined them, militarized them, transformed them into instruments serving specific purposes. And for extended periods, it functioned flawlessly. They became the resolution to intractable problems, the answer to questions that couldn't survive daylight, the invisible force ensuring everything aligned with design specifications. But then catastrophic miscalculation occurred, a judgment error that will haunt them through every remaining sunset. They aimed this weapon at you, provided a dossier containing your image and location and a catalog of presumed vulnerabilities, instructed them to resolve the problem using any methodology necessary, just eliminate the complication, and they accepted because that's their function, their consistent pattern. Another designation, another objective, another presence to be erased. Accept this assignment. This time the target's gaze returned something unexpected, not fear or rage or panic, recognition, as though you'd anticipated their arrival, as though you understood their purpose perfectly, and found the entire situation entertaining in ways that made their training malfunction. They began surveillance using taught methodology, from concealment, documenting patterns, mapping routines, identifying the vulnerabilities every human possesses with sufficient observation. But intelligence kept returning anomalous, contradictory, impossible according to every behavioral profile constructed about humans under duress. You lacked the expected weaknesses, didn't follow patterns enabling prediction and manipulation and ultimate control. Instead, you moved through existence like someone operating under completely different physics, like you'd examined their operating rules and classified them as optional suggestions at most, irrelevant at minimum. And every day of observation, every interaction witnessed, every decision you executed started fracturing something foundational in their understanding about power and who genuinely possesses it. There was this specific moment. They discuss it now privately when circumstances and trust align. This precise instant when everything crystallized. You were positioned in a scenario architectured for your destruction. They'd maneuvered you into circumstances where every option produced loss, where capitulation was the singular rational response, where anyone with functioning survival instincts would have withdrawn and accepted defeat gracefully. And they watched, anticipating your fracture, already planning subsequent moves for when vulnerability manifested. But you didn't fracture, didn't withdraw, didn't even react. Instead, you smiled, that lethal smile that makes primitive survival systems activate emergency protocols. And you inverted the entire situation with 3 sentences and silence calibrated precisely to maximize discomfort. When resolution arrived, you hadn't merely escaped the trap. You'd claimed the territory it occupied and made everyone who constructed it question if control ever actually existed. That's when certainty arrived, when the decision formed, even if weeks passed before action manifested. Weeks untangling themselves from obligations and threats and financial arrangements, keeping them tethered to that deteriorating enterprise. They realized in that crystallizing moment they'd been serving amateurs, people who confused power with resources and reputation and capacity for inflicting harm. But you comprehended something they could never grasp, regardless of education or consultation or expensive expertise. Power isn't what you inflict on others, it's what you make them inflict upon themselves. It's how you occupy dimensional space that forces everyone else to recalculate their positioning relative to your presence. It's the gravitational field you generate that warps reality around you, whether intentional or not. So they began planning extraction, carefully, methodically, with the same precision applied to every operation ever assigned. Simple departure wasn't possible, because enforcers don't receive retirement packages, can't permit someone containing that volume of classified knowledge existing uncontrolled. Too volatile, too hazardous, too many encrypted secrets locked in biological storage, which meant extraction required permanence, required a maneuver so audacious and absolute that reversal became impossibility. Required burning bridges so completely the smoke would suffocate anyone attempting reconstruction. They needed to defect in ways that made you their singular survival option. Needed to commit so entirely to your side that former employers couldn't even threaten reacquisition because the act of approaching you rendered them untouchable to that old world. And then one day they simply appeared at your location. No advance warning, no negotiation protocols, no demands for assurances or sanctuary or compensation. Just arrived, waited for acknowledgement, made direct eye contact and stated, "I'm finished with them. Tell me what you require." And you displayed zero surprise, asked nothing, demanded no loyalty demonstrations or extracted promises of eternal service. You simply nodded once and said, "Welcome," as though you'd maintained an open position specifically for them all along, as though this moment possessed the inevitability of planetary rotation, as though universal forces had been arranging components specifically to manifest this exact convergence at this exact temporal coordinate. And in that instant, they knew the choice was correct. Because you weren't treating them as defector or traitor or tool to be exploited. You were treating them as what they'd always desired, but never received permission to become. Someone who selects their own allegiances instead of accepting assignments from circumstance and fate. Now let's discuss what they delivered, because this transcends acquiring an ally. This isn't merely their loss becoming your gain in some zero-sum organizational calculation. What entered your space when they defected was exponentially more valuable than muscle or expertise or intimidation capability. What you received was complete architectural blueprints of their entire operation. Every concealed weakness, every clandestine alliance, every contingency they believe secured behind layers of misdirection and encryption. They didn't simply bring information, they brought comprehension. The profound systemic knowledge only possible from years inside the mechanism, from being the instrument deployed when nothing else functioned. They know which board members actually govern and which exist as decoration. Know which transactions are legitimate commerce and which are facades for operations requiring darkness. They know relationship details, financial improprieties, secret ambitions waiting for optimal timing, every petty conflict, every festering resentment, every alliance maintained purely through mutual fear of exposure, everything cataloged, memorized, available for recitation like sacred text when you need specific intelligence about specific individuals. And now all that classified information, all those meticulously protected secrets they assumed safe, because who would their enforcer ever inform? It's all yours, resting in your possession like a weapon you didn't need to forge yourself. But here's what elevates this from catastrophic to absolutely unrecoverable for them. This detail that transforms bad into fatal. They don't just know present operations, they know thought patterns, know decision-making algorithms, know which tactics deploy under pressure because they executed those tactics personally hundreds of times previously. When they're assembled in crisis management, attempting to formulate responses, minimize damage, protect remaining infrastructure, your new ally sits beside you, predicting every move before execution, every strategy before attempt, every self-deception before articulation. You're not merely ahead anymore. You're operating in a completely separate timeline, making moves they won't comprehend until 3 weeks downstream when consequences finally penetrate their awareness. And the intelligence isn't passive data archived somewhere, isn't information you might eventually deploy if situations require it. They're actively demonstrating leverage application for every data point, how to apply pressure to specific structural weaknesses, how to create cascading system failures by touching precisely the correct element in precisely the correct manner at precisely the correct moment. They're not merely an informant, they're a guide through the architecture of their former employer's annihilation, showing which supporting structures to remove, which relationships to destabilize, which assumptions to violate so completely their entire worldview collapses inward. They're probably contracting forensic specialists currently, probably engaging security consultants to determine what might have been extracted, copied, stolen before departure. And they'll discover gaps everywhere. Empty directories where sensitive documentation existed, missing files from secured servers, copied communications from private accounts. But here's what will make them physically ill when full comprehension arrives, when they finally understand the complete scope of loss. Nothing was taken, no files stolen, no copying necessary because everything exists in biological memory. Decades of experience, thousands of operations, every concealed crime and carefully hidden vulnerability memorized with the perfect recall of someone whose survival depended on retaining details. You can't delete memory, can't firewall understanding, can't secure what's already been transferred through nothing but their decision to walk through your door and choose a different side.